Before the world ended, Jake was known as the greatest treasure hunter alive. No matter how old or where the artifact was, he could find it. His favorite hunts were always underwater, and he loved the freedom of working for himself. But then a massive solar flare hit the planet and everything went to hell. Electronics fried, governments fell, and warlords took control. Cities starved, money became worthless, diseases spread fast, and getting medicine or fuel was nearly impossible. 6 years after the solar flare, Jake was still doing what he did best: treasure hunting across the ruins of England. One day he arrived in an old neighborhood, studied the area carefully, and slipped into a hotel. He climbed up to the penthouse and found a large bookshelf. After checking it closely, he discovered a hidden door behind it. He set a few small explosives, blew the steel door open, and hooked up a battery for some light. Inside there was a safe with a keypad that needed a password. Jake studied the fingerprints on the keys and figured out the combination by jotting down the letters in his notebook until he got it right. When he opened the safe, he found a collection of old records and played the one that matched the password. The music triggered a second secret compartment to open, revealing a priceless violin. Just then, a group of thugs wearing fake police uniforms burst in, demanding the violin. Jake refused and warned them to back off, but they lunged at him anyway. He opened fire and took them down one by one, fighting hand to hand when he had to reload. When he ran out of bullets, he threw a knife into a man's back. The leader pulled the blade out only for Jake to flip him off, triggering an explosive hidden inside the blade that blew the guy apart. Moments later, Jake entered a massive mansion that had been turned into a warlord's factory. He handed over the violin to the warlord's assistant, who told him that King August had another job lined up for him. Jake thought it was ridiculous for a warlord to call himself a king and turned down the offer, especially since it meant crossing the English Channel. When August found out Jake refused, he told his assistant to find something the treasure hunter couldn't say no to. Jake returned to his home, a wrecked boat sitting in the docks. He disarmed his traps, fed his dog, and checked through the payment from his last job, which included an old record. He played it while drinking, then dozed off, dreaming of sailing the world on a new boat. The next morning, a noise woke him up. When he went outside, he found a soldier caught in one of his traps. The man said King August had come to see him. Jake didn't bother freeing him and just left. Inside a nearby warehouse, August was waiting, surrounded by soldiers. He explained that he'd hired plenty of people before, but none of them could find things the way Jake could. August claimed he was trying to rebuild civilization, but Jake wasn't buying it, until August revealed the reward: a brand new boat. The mission was to retrieve the Mona Lisa, supposedly hidden in a secret government storage facility. Paris had been one of the first cities attacked after the flare, so the government had evacuated its national treasures. August promised Jake all the supplies and resources he'd need. With that, Jake accepted the job. Before leaving, he said goodbye to his dog and asked August's assistant to take care of him if he didn't come back. Later, Jake arrived at the airport and wasn't thrilled to see bullet holes in the plane. August showed him the flight map, pointing out safe routes and warning him to avoid rebels in the city center. One of August's contacts would meet Jake and guide him to the vault. Once he had the Mona Lisa, August would send an extraction team. 3 hours later, as night fell, Jake took off. The young pilot seemed confident that everything was working fine, but Jake noticed him struggling with the controls. The pilot eventually admitted they'd run out of fuel halfway there, meaning they'd have to parachute out. Jake, who had never jumped before, asked for advice, but the pilot wasn't much help. Jake dozed off again, dreaming about sailing with a woman this time. He woke up suddenly when the plane started shaking. They were under attack. The pilot did his best to dodge the shots but said they'd have to jump early. Once they found a clear spot, Jake jumped and pulled the chute, landing hard but alive. The area was on fire, and he saw rebels who'd been hanged for defying local warlords. Then a tank burst through a building and aimed right at him, but before it could fire, it got hit by a missile. Rebels came out of hiding and threw a grenade inside the tank, killing the soldiers. After that, Jake moved on. In the city of Amiens, soldiers ruled the streets under the cruel warlord Volkov. He loved chess, saying it helped him master battle tactics, and he forced civilians to play with him, shooting anyone who lost or didn't know how. When his lieutenant Gornik reported that someone had parachuted nearby, Volkov ordered his men to hunt the intruder down. By morning, Jake reached St. Quentin. The people there were poor, starving, and terrified of Volkov's forces. Jake found a car, grabbed some ragged clothes to disguise himself, and tried to blend in. In the town square, soldiers barked out the warlord's rules, including a strict curfew, and shot 2 rebels on the spot as an example. When Jake tried to slip away, soldiers surrounded him and ordered him to drop his bag. He threw it in one man's face and started fighting, slamming one guy's hand in a car door and smashing another's head through a window. A soldier came at him with a knife, but Jake blocked and stabbed him with his own blade. Within seconds they were all down, except for one last man who raised his gun. Before he could shoot, a woman slit his throat from behind. It was Dre, August's contact. She told Jake she'd been watching him to see if he could handle himself since things were about to get worse. The two of them moved quickly through the city, trying to stay hidden in crowds, but a general spotted them. They ducked into a church and met Father Sampson, who had a map taken from recently executed rebels. He brought them to his garage, showing them a truck he'd been fixing up. On the map, he pointed out their next destination, and Jake noticed a cipher code in the corner. While Sampson got the truck ready, Dree patched up Jake's injuries. Just then, the general and his soldiers surrounded the church, demanding everyone come out. Jake and Dree rushed to the truck while Sampson went outside to stall them. When the soldiers didn't believe he was alone, they stormed in. Sampson drew his gun and shot the general in the arm before getting gunned down himself. The soldiers found the garage and got distracted by Jake in the truck. Dree ambushed them from behind, taking them out fast with a mix of gunfire and knife strikes. The troops outside didn't hear the gunshots because they were still focused on Sampson. But when Jake started the truck, the radio blared loudly, giving them away. The tank outside fired its cannon at the church, but Jake and Dree burst through the garage door just in time. The soldiers opened fire, but the truck's armor held up. Jake hit a ramp and jumped over the tank to escape. Motorbikes chased after them and they hit a checkpoint up ahead. Guards opened fire, but Jake, realizing the truck was bulletproof, drove straight through and leaped over the barricade. More soldiers appeared in cars, so he crashed through a building to shake them off. The tank fired from a distance, missing them but blowing up cars and bikers behind them. After dodging more explosions, Dree made him drive into a tunnel. Two bikers followed, but when they emerged, another tank was waiting. Jake swerved just in time to dodge the blast. The chase continued until they were surrounded again. Dree tossed a grenade that wiped out the bikers, but a car still tailed them. The tank fired once more and Jake launched the truck off another ramp, letting the cannon blast destroy their pursuers instead. When the dust settled, they finally made it to Soissons. That night they stopped to rest. Jake questioned why so many people were dying over a painting, no matter how famous it was. Dree explained that the Mona Lisa wasn't the real goal, it was just an excuse to find the vault before Volkov, since the vault was packed with weapons the rebels could use. Before they went to sleep, Dree folded an origami boat and handed it to Jake for good luck. The next day, Volkov rode his armored train straight to St. Quentin. The general reports to Volkov, trying to earn some favor by boasting that only 2 rebels managed to take down their entire squad, and that he personally killed the priest. But Volkov doesn't care. Without hesitation, Gornik shoots the general dead. Meanwhile, in Soissons, Jake and Dree stop at an old building that's supposed to hold the vault. Dree is tense, warning Jake that this area is controlled by the Wraiths, former inmates who've turned into violent cannibals. They suddenly notice a flare fired nearby, meaning someone's been tracking them. The two rush inside and find blood smeared all over the walls. Worse yet, the vault is already open and completely empty. Jake examines the scene and smells gunpowder on the hinges, realizing the door was blown off recently. Since the vault itself isn't damaged, he concludes that whoever came here managed to get everything out and move it to a safer place. Outside, the Wraiths are closing in fast. The pair continues searching the upper floors, spotting bullet holes and spent casings everywhere. The walls are cracked from heavy gunfire, suggesting that defenders made their last stand there. In the main office, they start looking for evacuation records. Inside a filing cabinet, Jake discovers a false wall and a notebook hidden behind it. Dree reads the French notes and finds a set of coordinates. Jake, however, doesn't trust it. He believes the people guarding the treasure wouldn't just leave the real location so easily. He pulls out the cipher they found earlier and starts decoding the coordinates. Just as he's getting close, the Wraiths storm the building. Dree wants to run, but Jake keeps working until he finally deciphers the message. It's not coordinates but a name, Simserhof, a French fort. While Dree marks it on the map, the Wraiths come charging up the stairs. Jake plants a grenade on the door handle, and they escape through a window. Moments later, the door opens and the grenade explodes, taking the cannibals out. Back in the truck, Dree contacts the rebels and tells them to meet at Simserhof. Moments later, Volkov's armored train rolls into Soissons. He spots the truck's tire marks and quickly realizes Jake's been there. Gornik finds the notebook with the fake coordinates, but Volkov sees through it immediately. Using a UV light, he spots Dree's fingerprints on the real map. Now he knows their next destination. The Wraith who fired the flare earlier is still alive, but when he tries to talk, Volkov thanks him by shooting him in the head. Eventually, Jake and Dree reach Simserhof. Dree cuts the chains off the gate and they make their way inside. The fort looks abandoned, no guards, no movement, yet some machines are still running. Jake figures there must be solar panels powering them. While checking the blueprints, Dree realizes the humming noise they hear isn't just the generators. It's part of the air filtration system for the vault, which must still be sealed shut. Jake studies the plans and decides to access it through an air duct, but there's a giant fan blocking the way. Dree agrees to disable the solar panels while Jake climbs down from the top floor. Jake ties a rope to a valve, cuts his backpack to make a harness, and lowers himself into the shaft. The fan spins dangerously below him and friction starts fraying the rope. At the same time, Dree reaches the rooftop and starts shooting at the solar panels. Her first shot misses but the second one hits, cutting the power. The fan slows to a stop just as Jake's rope snaps, sending him crashing down. After a rough landing, Jake notices the lower duct is flooded. He takes a deep breath and dives in, swimming through the narrow passage. He finds a locked hatch at the end and struggles desperately until he manages to force it open, bursting through before he drowns. Inside, he finally reaches the vault and opens it from within so Dree can join him. What they find shocks Jake. The Mona Lisa isn't a painting at all. It's a nuclear bomb with the famous image painted across its casing. Jake is stunned, but Dree admits she already knew. August didn't tell Jake the truth because he knew Jake wouldn't have helped otherwise. Dree explains that when the US bombed Japan during World War II, they kept an extra nuclear bomb, meant for Moscow if things got worse. August's goal wasn't to detonate it, she says, he just wanted to keep it out of the hands of warlords like Volkov. Jake doesn't believe any of them can be trusted. He says all these so-called kings are the same, and fighting them is pointless because they always end up on top. As the rebels arrive to help Dree move the bomb, Jake decides he's done and drives away in the truck. Seconds later, Volkov's train reaches Simserhof. His soldiers open fire, mowing down the rebels. Gornik launches a missile that blows up their truck, and Volkov himself is handed the safety key to the bomb. As the soldiers haul the weapon onto the train, Jake sits nearby, staring at the tiny origami boat Dree gave him. The memory changes his mind. He turns the truck around and races back to the fort. When he arrives, he finds bodies everywhere, but Dree is still alive, though injured. He bandages her leg while she apologizes for lying, saying he was right all along, there's no point in fighting. Jake disagrees. He believes they can still stop Volkov by destroying the train. They gather leftover explosives and set up a trap. As they drive away, the fort detonates behind them in a massive explosion. Later that evening, Volkov's train slows down because of thick fog. Impatient, Volkov shoots the conductor in the head, forcing the train to speed up again. Up ahead, Jake drives onto a bridge. As the train passes underneath, he jumps onto it and tosses a grenade through the door, wiping out several guards. More soldiers rush in, and Jake fights them hand-to-hand, stealing one of their guns and mowing down the rest. Gornik joins the fight next, proving much tougher than the others. The two brawl viciously until Gornik kicks Jake toward the bomb, but Jake retaliates with a low blow that gives him the upper hand. Then Volkov shows up and starts shooting. Jake grabs Gornik and uses him as a human shield before tackling Volkov to the ground. The men trade brutal punches across the train car. Eventually, Jake slams Volkov onto a table and pins his hand down with a compass, then snatches the safety key. Meanwhile, Dree drives to the next bridge and sets up the explosives. As the train barrels forward, the bridge explodes, collapsing right before it. Jake barely escapes as the train derails and plunges into the gorge, exploding repeatedly as it crashes down the rocky slope. Dree watches the wreck burn, believing Jake died in the blast, until he suddenly appears behind her, alive. She bursts into tears and they hug tightly. Sometime later, back in England, Jake meets with August and hands him the safety key. He explains that the bomb lies deep in the gorge and only the casing detonated, but August insists they'll retrieve it someday just to be sure. Jake refuses any more missions and sets off on his new boat. Dree joins him, and the two share a kiss as they sail off to explore the world together. Meanwhile, August locks the safety key in his personal vault, revealing that he's had the real Mona Lisa the entire time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of the exciting content coming your way. Every new video is made with you in mind, and I'd love to have you here for the journey. See you in the next one.